This is the Smart Crosscut. I'm going to show you an improvement to it today that you can do yourself. Hi, I'm Ron Paulk, and this is the Smart Wood Shop. If you want to get a set of plans to build a smart wood shop, or one of my workbenches, or the Smart Crosscut for yourself, you can click on the link in the description of this video down below. It'll take you right to our website, and you can go to Ron's store there. You can download the plans 24/7, 365. As soon as you purchase them, they're there for you to download instantaneously. And also we have a few affiliate links with great companies like Atlas 46 and TSO, as well as Amazon. If you purchase anything through our store, they will share a little bit with us, which helps support the channel, but they won't charge you any extra. You know what the Smart Crosscut is? It's basically two pieces of plywood that are cut to certain dimensions, and a T-track and a stop block, and it all works perfectly with the compact bench, the Paulk compact bench, and the soon to arrive Smart compact bench, based on the 96 millimeter or the 20 millimeter holes laid out in 96 millimeter. Of course, you can adjust that to 4-inch spacing or whatever you cut your bench to. And this has been fantastic because I've been able to cross-cut plywood. Typically, I'm ripping the plywood first and then doing my cross-cutting, and that's really like if I'm doing cabinets, plywoods are going to be cut down to 24 for the width, or 23 7/8, and then I'm going to cut the pieces to the length using the cross-cut. But occasionally I do want to break down and cross-cut plywood wider than just the 24, so the Smart Crosscut will let you do a full 48-inch sheet. And what I've done in the past is it supports it on one end, but it doesn't really support it in the middle of the other end, and I've come up with ways I'll just hold down on the plywood, made it work. Well, I got to thinking that I really liked how the one end of the Smart Crosscut, how it goes on with the bench dogs and then can be clamped on, and it supported the plywood out there, and I thought, well, why don't I just do that on the other end? So I just grabbed a couple of pieces of scrap plywood. The dimension it's not very critical. I think I'd make them the same width as the Smart Crosscut, just so that when you're stacking them, they'll all stack nice. And then make them a full 48 inches long, so if you cut a rip, this wide, about 15 inches or so, and then just cut that in half, you'll have both of these pieces. And then I went ahead and laid out the bench dog holes. I have the Parf Guide Mark II, so I laid out the bench dog holes to match up with the bench, and then of course they can be lined up with the holes, stick out where they need to, and I can clamp them down. And I did the dado across the holes where the clamps will go in, just the way I did on the plans on the Smart Crosscut. I did drop the dado for the clamps in a little deeper than the thickness of the clamps, because I wanted to make sure if I was ever cutting here that I wouldn't mess up a blade or a clamp by running across it. So it's 1/8 of an inch below the surface. But most of the time, I'm not going to be cutting through these just the way with my bench. I use my sacrificial strips, and once I've got it all laid out, I'll throw these on top, and then the plywood goes on that, and then I've got a full 3/4 of an inch to spare to cut through. And of course, I try to set the blade to just kind of barely cut through it. These extensions are not part of any plan. I'm just going to show you how to make them. So let's get started. First, I needed the material to make these transformer extensions for the bench, and I wanted to make sure that I was getting the maximum use of my material. And a project that I'm working on now is the Smart compact bench, and I needed the Sawhorses. So the first thing to do was to cut out that material. And you can see here that piece falling off. That is going to be eliminated when I put these transformers on. So I went ahead and made the rip to get the proper width on these Sawhorses, and then I cross-cut the 3 pieces I was able to get out of one sheet. And that left me the rip and then the end cross-cut left over. Then I took that rip and I just basically cut it in half. And then I won't spend a lot of time explaining what I'm doing here, but I'm using the Parf Guide Mark II to lay out the holes to match up with the bench at 96 millimeter centers. It probably isn't necessary, but this just allows me maximum flexibility to put these things in different scenarios depending on what my particular job is at the time. So a little extra time up front, but I think in the long run, it'll just allow me that flexibility. Next, I'd be taking these over to the router table to cut the dados, which will cut through some of the holes. So I'm going to make the dados a little bit longer than I really need, but again, allowing maximum flexibility. So I just made a couple of marks, and the router bit went right up into one of the 20mm holes, and then I started it and pushed it on through until I came to the hole that I felt would be, long enough. Again, the dado is far longer than I need, but again, I don't know exactly every situation I may run into, and I just wanted to be able to clamp them on the bench with either 1 or 2 clamps, depending on what my needs were at the time. And the dados are cut a little deeper than the thickness of the clamp. That way, if I do happen to be cutting on top of them, then I wouldn't cut through and damage the blade or the clamp. Adding these 2 pieces of plywood that are clamped down, I've extended the support of my approximately 3x6 bench to where it'll handle full 4x8 sheets and completely support it. I can cut repetitive cuts with the stop up to 80 inches, a little further, 80.5 or so. Pulling these dogs, I can actually shift this down and go even longer if I need to. This is fantastic. I've got this big work surface that I can easily take to any job of any size, and along with a track saw and parallel guides, it's like having a sliding table saw with a 10-foot stroke on the job. When I don't need the crosscut fence, I can just pull a couple of bench dogs and remove that and get it out of the way. They'll just slide right down the holes, and I can just clamp them. In fact, I can do that here. And now I'm ready to throw a full sheet of plywood on here and break it down in rips. And I could either make kerf cuts in this and just replace these over time, or like I've done with all of my workbenches, I can use my sacrificial strips, just like I would on top of the bench. And my third one. And then I won't be cutting up these extensions. I need 1 more sawhorse blank. I was only able to get 3 out of 1 piece, so I need just 1 piece out of this. And I don't want to rip my plywood. I want to leave as much of it intact as possible. This is a perfect example of the bench, the smaller bench, holding a full piece of plywood so that I can cut a piece out of it and not have anything falling away. So it's just complete support. If you enjoyed this video, if you learned anything, if you'd like to see me make more, be sure to give me a thumbs up and subscribe. And remember, when you subscribe, got to ring that bell. That's the only way YouTube will let you know when I drop a new video. Hey, thanks for dropping into the Smart Wood Shop. You stay safe and have a great day.